Good evening and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. I am Shafi'u Suleiman. Tonight, we dive into an ongoing debate on a bill to amend the 1999 Constitution to increase the 13% derivation formula to 50% with a view to address development challenges affecting mineral resource producing states across the country. The legislative proposal, which is sponsored by House of Reps member Honorable Awaji Inombeka Abiante, and 8 others, specifically wants to tinker with sections 163 subsection 2, 134 subsection 1A and B, and 140 subsection 1A and B of 1960, as well as 1963 constitutions to reflect the thinking of the framers for enhanced revenue development purposes. For development purposes. The bill is, however, coming on the heels of protracted agitations for restructuring, which some see as covert political gimmick to attain resource control, and a federation grappling with growing budget deficit and filing governance demands. Could this be a surreptitious move to push for resource control through the back door? How can other mineral resource producing states, especially in North, situate themselves in the unending conversation? Joining us to analyze these critical issues are Dr. Bello Ingawa, a development economist who joins us from Kaduna. And here in the studio, we have Rabi'u Tukur, a development policy analyst, who together will be joining us to navigate through the issues. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And viewers, before we set the stage for the conversation, let's take a look at this report.
Sponsored by River State Representative Awaji Inombeka Abiante and 8 other members, the bill proposes raising the derivation fund to a minimum of 50%. Abiante argued that since all Nigerian states are rich in mineral resources, the bill would ensure that regions where these resources are extracted receive a fair allocation of revenues according to a 50% or more formula.
Speaker, you have sat down there and you have referred several alterations to the Nigerian Constitution to the Constitutional Review. So if Abiante is being singled out today, it goes to show that whatever we are saying and doing here is of no consequence, of no effect.
This is not the case.
Mr. Speaker, please. Mr. Speaker, please, sir. Please, sir. You asked me to expatiate. The portion that I have only requested to be altered is to look at the principles of derivation. We have even passed a part of what I am asking for.
However, some lawmakers expressed concerns, citing a lack of detailed information about the bill.
The House needs more information about this so that the members will know what they are voting on. The mover of this bill with the 7 other people, I would say they're a bit economical to the House, because we need to know under which principles would they want to amend section 162 subsection 2 of the Constitution. We need to know the principles behind that. They need to break it down, let us know the rationale, because we don't have the bill.
Section 162(2) says the President often received of advice from Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission shall table before the National Assembly proposal for revenue allocation from the Federation account. In determining the formula, the National Assembly shall take into account allocation principles, especially those of population, equality of states, internal revenue generation, land mass, terrain, as well as population density.
Nothing will happen to a bill. We'll just give a little more time for members, now that they are aware of this particular request from you, to go through, and then on Tuesday, we'll resume debate on this particular matter. I don't think if there's any issue, and just a 1-week extension will not hurt the consideration of this particular bill. So, with your kind permission, we can step this bill down to Tuesday next week for continuation of debates.
As a result, the bill was stepped down. In a separate development, a similar bill sponsored by Mark Esiet, which advocates a 60% revenue allocation for all producing states, passed its second reading in the House.
Okay, that was a report from our National Assembly correspondent, x-raying how that debate on the floor of the House went on. Back in the studio, just like I said, we have at the moment Rabi'u Tukur Hassan, development and policy analyst, who joins us to navigate through the issues. We are also waiting to establish contact with Dr. Bello Ingawa. Okay, you listened to the report, right? You watched the report there and some of the conversation. You've also heard the mover of this, the sponsor of this bill, talking about reason behind it. Some will say the issue around generally restructuring and, also if you cap something out, you can talk about resource control, which is always aligned with this. Nigerians would never have, maybe the last on this matter. It's an unending conversation. Now it has resurrected at the House of Representatives. First, what are your understanding? Let me get your understanding of the issues surrounding this latest move.
Yeah, good evening. First and foremost, the issues and matters that will arise or that arose pre-independence are issues that remain still very topical in the minds of politicians and nationalists sometimes, because the fundamental principle of fairness, equity in a nation and in a federated state like Nigeria are very fundamental, because it is basically the absence of fairness and equity, either among the federating units, that is the states and the local governments, and or amongst classes of the elites, the ruling political elites and the masses, and on. Some of these are the very important points that generate tensions in the system and in the polity that has actually continued to consume a lot of the space, in us, a lot of the intellectual space, a lot of the energy that we're supposed to actually put towards growing the nation and developing the country. So it is an issue that definitely has been in the mind of politicians, because ultimately the biggest benefactors of some of these things are the politicians, because they decide who gets
they're
what.
under affairs of the government, either at the center
exactly,
or the
at the center or the
subnationals.
subnationals. They decide who gets what, when, and how, kind of. And so I'm not surprised that an issue like this is coming, given the kind of some of the conversations that are ensuing in the polity, especially the recent emergence and profligacy of individuals that have been making all sort of calls for in fact, people going to the extent of speaking about getting, self-actualization kind of.
Now,
so it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, but basically, looking at the motive, going by what the movers presented before the House, they are looking at the constitutions, 1960 and 1963 constitutions in particular. And the argument is that the relevant section that is being contended, that's section 140 subsection 2, did not align with the thinking, with the actual proposal, if you like, or the actual content of those constitutions in respect to this revenue sharing and so on. The 13% that is being enjoyed currently by all producing states, even though it's also contentious, it has been a very long-term issue. But now, the movers of the sponsors of the bill are looking at expanding the net, if you like, or expanding the beneficial states now beyond the oil producing states. They are talking about minerals, solid minerals, and so on and so forth. Any state that has something to contribute to the center should benefit from this 50%. But don't you think this is rationally, acceptable, looking at the current state of some of these subnational governments, sometimes cannot do anything beyond just paying salary and that's all?
Yeah, yes, like I said, I don't regularly get surprised from the output I see on the floor of the Senate and the House of Reps. The caliber of people that have been elected to represent Nigerians in that house are people that have those mindset that definitely I can personally qualify as something in between myopism and ethnocentrism, in the sense that the biggest driver of ideology or ideas that you see being considered and being debated on the table of the National Assembly will still remain the very same issues, When a country that is drifting into economic and social crisis, wherein food inflation, by my records, we're talking of 1,000% in some cases. You're talking of the very basic things of life being the most important thing that is actually disturbing Nigerians, and yet such matters are not issues that are debated on the floors of the National Assembly. Matters that are discussed is the political class, the elite ideas of how to share more, how to take more, and how to garner more. And unfortunately, it is not about, even if the derivation formula, the derivation principle has been implemented, you go down, you don't see anything. So it's basically a political elite kind of an idea that is possibly meant to create another political subject for Nigerians to discuss around. But I think at the moment, given the nature and the kind of situation Nigerians are in, I would expect that I want to hear matters on the floor of the National Assembly, matters about the livelihoods of Nigerians. What are those things that need to be done to get food to the table, to get our education fixed, to get the health system fixed, to get security, and on and on. Some of the very basic things that create a society that needs democracy to work around them.
Okay, but then some would say there is perhaps a connect between what you've been talking about, the current situations Nigerians found themselves, and of course, some of the structural deficits also, because to a very large extent, they also contribute to the development deficits at the subnationals. States, that cannot generate revenue, substantial revenue, cannot do anything beyond just the basic things they do. To some, debates like this or initiatives like this could spur them, to rise up and begin to think of how, they can develop other sectors beyond just the oil sector, which is being relied upon. Now, even though there are also challenges, along the framework, so to speak, solid mineral, control states or states with solid mineral deposits, currently you find them, deeply in trouble. Take, for instance, Zamfara, which has enormous gold beneath its soil, but it's one of the states that has worse indices in terms of anything development you can talk about: education, human capital development, poverty, and so on and so forth. Did you think perhaps if this, get through, it could help in addressing some of these challenges?
Yeah. My little experience has shown me that development is not just about the amount of financial resources available.
The resource allocation now.
Yeah, it is not, because the small statistics I will give you is that every of the state that earns a 13% derivation, so far from 2002 upwards, we classically look at one state. We're looking at over $200 billion in dollar term, kind of. Now translate that to Naira and see what has actually been distributed. And whether there are commensurate rate of development that you see.
Maybe except for few,
Except, no, I mean commensurate. When you say commensurate, you mean with the amount of resources invested.
Yeah.
Everybody in the Niger Delta is supposed to be living a comfortable life. Because the resources is for the people.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the masses are still living in that same state of life and state of affairs. The political elites, and in this case, across all the spectrum of political elites. If I say political elites, I mean those that play party politics, the traditional leadership, the clergy, and everybody.
I mean, they're all involved in this.
Everybody involved. So when you look at the demographics, you will see that the impact of all this derivation and all this 13% actually finances the profligacy of a certain class of people, yet the masses and the Nigerians that are still in that state are still living in poverty. So, on the basis of this assumption, I will not build a scenario that if the similar amount of resources is paid to Zamfara State or Gombe State or any other state, it will equally translate, because, like you said, the structure, the political structure is not such that it ensures the translation of resources into quality of life. It does not. It has not worked.
Right.
And therefore, I think from the point of view of a realist, kind of, the biggest examples we can draw are all over the place. I mean, the countries that have the least resources are the list of these resources beneath are richest. Like I said, Nigeria is the most endowed country in Africa. And what I mean by that is its geological location gives it every bit of a thing a nation needs. And yet, Nigeria is not ranked in the countries that has the resources.
So in other words, the problem is that of managing the resources.
The problem is that of how to manage the resources and transmit those resources into the quality of lives of people. No matter how much would be given, politicians and the public servants and bureaucrats would always have the best, like Jace, out of it.
Okay, it's coming at a time, the president, or rather the government, also just rejig, the cabinet.
Yeah.
And one ministry that was created is actually the Ministry of that is to supervise, if you like, or to run the affairs of regional
development agencies,
commissions, that have been created.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, the Niger Delta Ministry has also been subsumed, into this arrangement.
Yeah.
And looking at the argument put forward by the sponsors of this bill, they are also looking at it from that regional perspective, that all the regions have one thing or the other to contribute to the center, the north in particular.
Yeah.
Oil is being exploited in Gombe, in Bauchi, and so on. And then here we are talking about solid mineral resources, also beneath. So looking at all of this, where do you think, the northern part of, I mean, the northern political elites, the governors in particular. How do you situate them in this conversation beyond just, you know, being part of those who, I mean, who get carried away by the oil money? You know, where do you situate them? Are they thinking out of, because this is a conversation that will continue for. So are they properly situating themselves to negotiate, so to speak?
Now, in this case, I think it is not specifically the governors that should be the most relevant set of people around this. It should be the members of the National Assembly and the Senate, because whatever outcome the processes go through, it will end up into an act being done to actually implement or give effect to what has been decided. Now, what experience has shown from the 2001, 2002, from the dynamics, from the conversations, from the experience, from the realities of what happened on the floors of the National Assembly, and how this same act that we are still calling the 13% Derivation Act that passed, and its subsequent amendment, I think we are not generally prepared intellectually to probably understand the dimensions of the conversation, talk less of even inferring implications into the future, not just immediate implications into our budgets, implications into the future. I can see that, and I do not expect equally that the present membership of the National Assembly that come from the North equally have similar acumen, similar kind of experience to really understand the dimensions and be able. I would cite an example of what is the basis of my thought. Now, coming to the governors, I think I would say we have a fantastic set of governors, and I only pray that God will guide them into, in the first instance, understanding the dynamics and understanding the dimensions and implications of conversation. And then God will equally guide them into seeing it as an important matter that should actually be, that should be actually give them a lot of opportunity to think and through. I'm just praying.
Right, talking about visionary leadership, you know, we've seen set of leaders, you know, before the independence, who have this kind of thinking. When issues like this came up, you know, they look at the region, they look at its standings in terms of, you know, in the whole picture. What does it stand to benefit? Is it properly situated, you know, to take advantage of the situation and so on? Take, for instance, the independence. You know, it has to be delayed at some point, even though some say, some keep criticizing that. But the late Sarona would have to say, wait a minute, we have to fix XYZ to be able to meet up with this. And it was done. Now, there are people who think that with this kind of conversations, talking about increase in derivation, the region, or the North in particular, may be at a disadvantaged position for certain reasons. If this is allowed to sail through, the other regions who are already benefiting from this derivations will just have to take, you know, immediately take advantage of the new arrangement, while the states in the North, for instance, or those harboring these solid minerals, would have to take longer time to benefit, because currently they are not, you know, there are a lot of issues around even understanding the quantum of what is on ground, how it can be harnessed, how, you know, you can get the investors, how much is needed to, and all of that. What would be your reaction to this?
Yes, the first statement actually reminded me of an episode one of my lecturers at the university of those days was telling us that if his advice were to have been sought, he would have suggested that Nigeria should have been given independence in 1980, not even 1960.
So 30 years later.
So now, all things being equal, now every square kilometer in Nigeria has an embedded resources that God had actually placed by its own mercies. And oil is not the only resources and gas that Nigeria has. And secondly, Nigerian oil and gas resources that drifted when the continent was being formed, drifted from somewhere into that place, and it's still drifting. And that I am looking at the entire implications of this fiasco that is generating from the perspective of what happened in 2002. Now come to think of it, you remember the 13% derivation, the first one, and then the subsequent amendment. If people can go through the records, they would see that the 13% that we are talking about, in absolute terms, that is at first, did not bring any other state from the states in the Niger Delta. And the subsequent amendment brought in states that are even out of the Niger Delta.
Right. For certain reasons. I understand, even those harboring the pipelines.
You understand me? You understand me? And yes. So there is a lot more dimension to the entire thing, and I don't see increasing or decreasing as the most fundamental matter. The most important matter is that, look, the agitations currently going on is, what if the prices of oil goes up? Because some of the basic reasoning behind what I have seen being submitted was because of the fluctuations in the US dollar kind of a thing, because of the oil prices in the world, the fortunes of some of these states that are benefiting from the derivation formula is dwindling, and therefore that forms the basis for the call for more. For more. And I ask, what of those days when the prices of oil goes up?
We're up, yeah.
And therefore, if we have people that are intellectually inquiring into this matter, then I should begin to see people asking now, whatever policy that we would do or whatever law we're going to pass should equally be reflective of the value of the dollar, because if one of the fundamental assumptions and reasons for making a case is because that there is this dwindling thing in the value of the dollar, in the price of oil, and then the law should equally proactively take care of those days when there is an increase in the price of oil, it will be a flexible arrangement. So when the price of oil comes down, it goes to 15%, and when the price of oil goes up, it comes to 10%, and so on and so forth. Because I don't actually see the quality analytics that needs to begin to follow some of these things on the floor of the National Assembly.
Yeah, even though some will say perhaps even the conversation at the global level is even beyond what we're talking about. Because we're busy talking about oil resources when renewables are the in thing.
And what happened when...
So what happened, for instance, we were not properly situated as a country to take advantage of the renewables and so on, because of obvious reasons.
In the next 20 years, according to some of the best postulations we're seeing, the next 20 years, oil will no longer be a relevant matter in the global economy. It's only the natural gas component. But remember, the natural gas component is going to be, because it's of its sustainability thing, is going to be, in the next 20 years, in fact, our governments and our states, especially in the north, should better begin to brace up and plan, because going forward, it's not going to be business as usual.
Yeah, even the transition, with the transition that we're beginning to see. The president, was just saying this a couple of days ago. Was trying to make comparison between the price of petrol, pump price, and that of the CNG, the gas and so on. Yeah. So, but then, shouldn't this spark, around the conversation around the need to inject or rather to invest, in infrastructure, which is very critical. Take, for instance, the North, which is at a disadvantaged position when it comes to energy, security, so to speak. Now, a number of industries have, gone under as a result of lack of energy and all of that. And then projects like the AKK are there for states to benefit, to take advantage of, to liberate on. But there hasn't been corresponding significant investment in that corridor.
Yeah.
Is this a concern to you?
It's of a very serious concern. And let me give you the story of the AKK, because I've been part of it. You know, the pipe that has been built from the Niger Delta to Ajakuta Steel Company, was brought in 40 years ago. You know, 40 years in the history of Nigeria is so significant.
Very quite significant.
Now, it only take some guys from China, not a Nigerian president, not all those people that have become presidents in Nigeria, and the members of the Senate and what have you. It took the Chinese to say, like, look, this thing is going to be important and we're going to invest in it.
Yeah.
That is what it took us to
So
begin to
it
have.
wasn't.
Now it is not a governor of Kogi State or a governor of any state or the president or any minister. It is not a matter of concern because we've been naturally bestowed with leaders that actually not see beyond the stretch of their nose.
They are more concerned about the immediate
needs,
the oil
and
money, the free money.
Exactly. I said they don't see beyond the stretch of their nose because if it will take the Chinese to see value in developing this corridor. And this corridor that we're talking about was the same corridor that the British Empire had actually seen and developed the railway line across the chain, and then developed the industry, the agricultural, the cash crop industry, and then expropriated and built the UK Empire, the British Empire, and then left at independence. This same, so what I'm saying, our biggest problem is the problem of leadership. Our biggest problem in Nigeria is by human beings that have been bestowed with the opportunity of providing leadership and vision for Nigeria.
Visionary leadership.
Let me add to that. Now, the pipe will stretch up down to Kano.
Yeah.
And I have not seen any serious interest in all the states that this pipe has passed across.
Kaduna.
Kano. You can imagine. I have not seen any interest or any incentive being created and placed on the table for any investor that is interested in doing one thing or the other around the industrial value chain that they now. And same thing happened. You remember we have petroleum gas pipeline down from the Niger Delta down up to Kano to Gusau, same corridor, and it has been there for the past 30 years and
it has been vandalized even substantially.
It has not been working, and it is meant to actually provide an infrastructure that will efficiently distribute petroleum products in the entire length and breadth of the nation.
So if I understand your position, very few of these governors are having this foresight, having this thinking, looking at this, long-term development opportunities.
Yes.
Okay, coming back to the conversation, I've had one of the members of the House of Reps asking the leadership to rather step down, if you like, the conversation on this bill until members understand what it's entailed. Well, they had their way. It has been scaled down, but scheduled for second reading and so on. Do you think, this requires perhaps a review, a holistic review of the situation by the lawmakers themselves, or understanding the issue, so that they can be able to, correctly add value to it. And then, how do you? Some say there is also a connect between this and the larger issue around restructuring to attain the much talked about, federal fiscal federalism and so on and so forth. So how are you looking at this critical issues, especially the fact that it might just be beyond this lawmakers that sponsor the bill.
That is true.
Yeah, because looking at the conversation, it has been on for a while. It has come through different means. Constitutional amendments, national conferences, the 2014 National Compact, substantially talk about that. So it appears those who are pushing this idea would not relent, and they will come through any available. Yes.
There is no doubt that these movements, these action on the floor of the National Assembly is a build-up on the scale of some of the agitations we've been hearing from across the various regions of Nigeria. And they are quite connected because the timing is equally one index that could tell you that some of these things are co-joined kind of a thing. Now, that given, and the reasonings behind stepping down the matter on the floor of the National Assembly on the basis of what we can be able to read, suggesting that sufficient information has not been made on the table for people to. It is the same kind of a sinister kind of a, issues that gets generated on the floors of our National Assembly. In fact, the first agitations for a bill in 2002 even came in this manner. It came in this manner, even though those that sponsored the 2002 bill, the 2001-2002 bill, 13% Derivation Act, actually did their homework well, because they ended up buying, I should say, literally, getting the understanding of basically every member on the floor. Because I have come across records that said only one member of the Federal House of Reps voted vehemently against the bill. One honorable member from Plateau State.
You mean this current bill?
No.
Okay.
The 2002.
Okay, that's right.
Only one from the north. Despite some of the very structural defects that are embedded in the bill. Exactly, and some of the very lacunas that were embedded, and which our honorable members then did not see, because of probably the glaucomatic thing in their eyes, probably, or in their minds. I see that the clandestine way this one came up is equally in that way.
Requires such
exactly. And given the fact that suggestions are clear that this is a follow-up to some of the other sinister things taking place around the country, I pray that God will guide the members of the National Assembly to
quite a number of them, because even along the line of tenure and all of that, there are issues that perhaps should capture the attention of the lawmakers. For instance, there is this concern around a bill, seeking to to amend the Constitution to provide for 6-year tenure and all of that. And this bill has second reading. So a number of people are not paying attention to this. And some say it could be also
another
some of those.
And you would remember also that in 2002, the issue of extension during President Obasanjo came up and was one of the very fundamental prices that was actually negotiated. The issue of because around that time there was this fracas between the National Assembly and the executive when one Honorable Galinaba was leading, and when President Obasanjo wanted to actually extend, and then the National Assembly was vehemently against it, and then subsequently the issue of the amendment of the 13% Derivation Act came in also, and it scaled through around those period. So these are quite very valid assumptions that suggest there are some more sinister things.
Booby traps, some will say.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, coming back to the conversation, there is this concern that the discovery of oil, in the 70s and so on, and the subsequent exploitation, and has done more damage to especially this part of the country than good.
Which part?
Many believe that substantially, it has changed the mindset of the people. Here we are talking about a conversation, along sharing formula and what have you. But the discovery of the oil killed, if you like, the enterprise, the initiative, the opportunities, the whatever that the North has, at some point. We're talking about agricultural potentials, talking about, all that is there. People have now decided to migrate. Even the thinking has changed, the mindset from looking at those ventures because there is easy money, the oil money and all of that. Take, for instance, a typical example, even at the grassroots level. Someone is farming and the other would tell, I mean, why should you waste your time? Go to the city center, sell, petrol in jerrycans and you make money. And so people are being met, to migrate. And the impact is beginning to be felt, on this part of the country. Because the current insecurity that is ravaging the region and ravaging some parts of the country was said to be, a byproduct of what happened. How do you think, this current conversation, should make the leaders to have a rethink, to begin to think along, taking advantage of other critical sectors, or rather they have comparative advantage?
Yeah.
How do you think they can do this?
Yeah, well, like you said, boils down to the leadership. And in this case, the leadership is not only those people that are elected on paper on a ballot, and leadership across the entire society and community. And the present generation of leaders that we have, those still serving and those that have served before, are all part of the equation and are all they all take part of the blame of where we have actually found ourselves. If you see the trajectory of Nigeria, and particularly northern Nigeria, from 1965-66 upwards to 1966, you would note that the concept of having a vision for the future has gotten lost somewhere around between 1960s down into the 70s. It's the concept of what do I get now, and then let everybody go to hell.
Yeah.
So the leadership orientation has actually gotten bastardized, and the first thing we need to do is to actually the existing crop of leaders and the previous other leaders, the generation of leaders, should come together and sit down and actually come up with certain set of principles and certain set of scheme of arrangements that will be able to create a leadership template for the successive generation of leaders that will emerge. And that will not only take place by whether they gather or not, it's supposed to begin to be, people are supposed to begin to see it in their lifestyles and their actions.
Right.
Now that's given, the quality and quantity of resources that are embedded in this part of the country is sufficient for everybody to be comfortable.
But why is it difficult to harness this?
Now, the difficulty to harness came from, like we said, the fact that there weren't some visionary leaders that would set a direction for people to follow. Secondly, there is equally certain other cultural and traditional impediments, embedded in our culture that are really, of course, alien, because they were not what were there in the 60s and downwards. Now, they were not what were there in the 60s and downwards. And let me tell you, from 1944 upwards, northern Nigeria contributed about 44 to 50% of the total national resources, national wealth.
Right.
I mean, you take a look at it. 1940 upwards to 1960, before oil came up.
Yeah.
It were things that grow on the soil.
Groundnut pyramids.
Groundnut pyramids were there. Cotton was there, and the Nigerian economy was doing excellently well. And the biggest contributor for foreign exchange earning for Nigeria was products from the land.
That's right. Okay. Are you worried about the proliferation of this development commissions, regional development commissions, and do you foresee, another grand, design perhaps to attain, certain regionalism, along all of this line? Because virtually everything that is being talked about now is about regions and so on. Are we getting back to regional?
Now, when the 13% derivation issue came up in 2002. You recall the historical antecedents of why the Niger Delta Development Commission was created.
Yeah.
When there were a lot of pressure was put on President Obasanjo, he thought the best administrative way to take care of those agitations in the Niger Delta was to create an agency of government that will take care of some of the major development and environmental needs of the community, because
that are very obvious.
Exactly, because the most fundamental issues then were the issue of environmental degradation and lack of development. So President Obasanjo's wisdom was, when we can attain this without having to give 13%, because he vehemently opposed 13%.
Right. That's right.
We can create a federal agency that could take care of these agitations. And he did that, and at the same time the agitators still came forward for the 13%. So there are so many ways you can administratively take care of agitations on the development issues and what have you. There are so many ways. You can take care of that administratively, which can be considered as ad hoc. You can take care of it constitutionally by some of the efforts we are seeing. But I am saying we do not need to generally have to go through a process of amending the Nigerian Constitution or creating
to be able to achieve
to spur development.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. For talking to us, Rabi'u Tukur Hassan, a policy and development analyst. Thank you very much for your informed perspective.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we couldn't link up with Dr. Bello Ingawa, but we hope to do that subsequently. On behalf of the team and, of course, the technical crew, I'm Shafi'u Suleiman, saying this is all we have for you today. Join us tomorrow. We'll be back with another interesting topic. And remember, tomorrow is also a day you have your say. You have an interactive session that you can call in and share your thoughts. We appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you and good night.